Our company, the 3rd Anti-Tank Unit, was positioned roughly at the heart of the force, in a spot that felt deceptively secure amid the rolling terrain. Yet we hadn't ventured far from Nizhny Kub when the urgent command crackled over the radio. The company was to surge forward and link up with the lead tanks at the vanguard. True to our perennial misfortune, or perhaps our guarded fortune, everything remained eerily tranquil as we rumbled onward, cresting sun-baked hills and plunging through shadowed, boulder-strewn defiles that twisted like veins through the parched earth. Abruptly, a deafening thunderclap erupted from the distant front, ripping through the serene veil of the morning mist, a barrage of massive calibers that echoed like the wrath of ancient gods. The shells began slamming down with merciless precision, churning the ground into chaotic furrows. Dead ahead, a formidable tank trench yawned wide and abyssal, its earthen walls scarred by hasty fortifications, blocking our path like a scar across the landscape. Armored engineers, those stoic pioneers of breach, dismounted from their hulking vehicles with deliberate calm, methodically advancing under the pall of smoke, their satchels heavy with volatile demolition charges that promised to rend the obstacle asunder. Then came a sharp, stinging rap against the armored flank of my crew compartment. Like a venomous insect strike, small arms fire. Infantry, concealed and lethal that we hadn't anticipated in this forsaken stretch. They lurked in deep camouflage shafts carved into the gullies, overgrown with tall, whispering mountain grass that swayed like conspirators in the breeze, masking their positions in a verdant shroud. No telltale muzzle flashes pierced the haze, but the spiteful whine and snap of bullets left no illusion. They were there, embedded like roots in the soil, mesmerized. I peered through my gunner's sights, the crosshairs framing a tableau of raw audacity. A tall Oberfähnrich, his figure etched against the chaos, strode forward through the lethal hail without a scrap of cover, his movements a blend of resolve and recklessness. He slapped the charges against the trench wall with grim efficiency, the explosives nestling into the dirt like fatal seeds. But then a cataclysmic crash. The bastards had zeroed in on my scope, shattering it in a spray of fractured glass and splintered metal. By the time I hoisted my head above the gun shield, blinking against the acrid dust, the Oberfähnrich had vanished, his body eviscerated in a grotesque bloom of fire and shrapnel by an incoming shell, fragments scattering like macabre confetti across the scarred ground. The next sapper crawled forward on his belly, serpent-like through the muck, igniting the fuse with trembling hands that betrayed the terror gnawing at his core. I watched him convulse, jerk violently, then roll limp into the grass, a crimson stain blooming beneath him. Meanwhile, bullets keened overhead, slicing the air with insidious precision, forcing me to duck low as an enemy section lavished us with focused malice, likely because our perch on the extreme left flank painted us as the juiciest quarry, silhouetted against the horizon like targets on a firing range. Heavy shells now plummeted around us in relentless cascades, each impact a seismic shudder that hurled clods of earth skyward in volcanic plumes. I cast envious glances at the tanks sealing their hatches with metallic finality, their crews cocooned in steel while we half-track gunners remained grotesquely exposed, our torsos vulnerable above the shields, backs prickling to the rear. Then, triumph amid the inferno. The first charge detonated in a roaring geyser of flame and debris, breaching the trench's maw, followed swiftly by the second, then a third in staccato fury. How those sappers had orchestrated such sorcery under that withering storm of lead remained an enigma, a testament to human defiance etched in sweat and resolve. The vanguard tanks were already grinding across the ragged gap, treads churning the loosened soil into a slurry, unable to staunch our momentum. Trailing in their wake, my gun lurched precipitously down the improvised ramp, then heaved upward with a groan of straining hydraulics. On the ascent, horror seized me through the fractured viewport. Two of our own tanks blazed fiercely, their hulls gutted by direct hits or insidious mines, black smoke billowing in accusatory columns, the acrid stench of burning fuel and rubber clawing at our nostrils even from afar. But hesitation was a luxury we couldn't afford. Shells cratered the earth in our vicinity, a deadly lottery of proximity. I wove ceaselessly, jinking positions and modulating speed in a frantic ballet, every feint and surge a gambit to dilute the peril. Drawing on instincts honed in prior infernos, suddenly a slick warmth trickled down the nape of my neck, blood, viscous and metallic tanged. I probed gingerly but found no wound on my skin. Then my gaze traced the source. Rivulets of deep crimson seeped through the crevices encircling the gunner's perch, pooling like accusing ink. "Gunner, you hit?" I bellowed into the intercom, voice raw over the din. "Carl." "Negative, not me. came his steady retort, laced with the grit of suppression. Then a heartbeat later, his tone fractured. "It's Hein, pass a field dressing, quick as you can." I thrust the kid upward through the hatch, but moments later his whisper cut through. "I fear he's done for. 5 dressings already and he's out cold." "Hein, stay low, damn it!" I roared, but the words barely escaped before his agonized yelp pierced the clamor. Vaulting up by the gun shield in a desperate scramble, I executed a wild somersault onto the deck beside Karl, who clutched his jaw where a round had grazed harmlessly, splitting flesh but sparing bone. Hein, though, God, Hein was a ruin. An explosive bullet had ravaged his lower abdomen in a pulpy tear, entrails glistening amid the gore, his breath's shallow rasps fading into silence. After staunching Karl's wound with hasty bandages that smelled of iodine and despair, I rammed the first high-explosive round into the breech, the brass casing cold against my palms. Swinging the barrel in a crude arc toward the nearest defile, a shadowed ravine spewing death, I triggered it blind, the recoil a savage kick that jarred my spine, followed by a second thunderous bark. Miraculously, the enemy barrage eased fractionally, as if our defiance had bought a fleeting reprieve, though the shots were wild stabs into the void. Then the radio operator, doubling on the hull machine gun, yelped, "Movement, over there, in the brush!" He pivoted the weapon with frantic zeal, unleashing ragged bursts that stitched the undergrowth in spurts of muzzle flare and spent brass. Curses followed as he slumped. One of those phantom snipers had drilled his right arm, the entry a neat puncture, exit a mangled bloom. I leapt down to the commander's nook, binding his limb with practiced urgency, the fabric soaking through almost immediately. We halted beside the commander's vehicle, where Hauptsturmführer Erck seethed with barely contained rage, his face a mask of soot and fury. "Fall back. Full speed to the combat trains near Nizhny Kub. Rendezvous there and hold." We wheeled about in a screech of treads on gravel, accelerating into retreat. Astonishment dawned as we gauged the distance. We'd clawed 9 kilometers forward. A grueling advance, while the infantry lagged far behind at Nizhny Kub, their foot-slogged columns a distant mirage. Withdrawing solo through that deceptively somnolent countryside, it erupted into vivid menace. The whole expanse stirred to lethal vigilance. Red Army soldiers materialized from every crevice. Ditches, thickets, ruined hovels. Like specters summoned from the soil, their ambushes a sudden tempest of fire that lashed our flanks. Despite his perforated arm, the radio operator triggered the machine gun in defiant sweeps, hosing the thickets and leaving a grisly wake of crumpled forms, their khaki stained darker in the dust. I perched at the gun's rear with Karl, alternating bursts from the submachine gun, its stock slick with sweat, and lobbing grenades rearward in lazy arcs. The blasts blooming like lethal flowers, shrapnel whispering through the air. One grenade tumbled perfectly into a foxhole, disgorging a Red Army man in a convulsive ejection, his uniform shredded, body arcing briefly before thudding inert. Another figure, a lone infantryman, loped alongside with brazen nonchalance, hefting an anti-tank mine like a grotesque talisman, his intent clear, to affix it to our hull in a suicidal gambit. I confess a perverse admiration for his pluck. He pursued with cheerful tenacity, undaunted by our parting stings of fire. His face split in a feral grin amid the chaos. Yet intent is intent, and necessity overrode sentiment. A well-placed burst felled him at last, his burden tumbling harmlessly into the dirt. At length, Nizhny Kub's first ramshackle buildings materialized on the horizon. A cluster of weathered facades under a pall of dust. I radioed for bearings to the main dressing station, the coordinates a lifeline in the haze. We extracted Hein with reverent care, his pulse a feeble flutter. But by the time the medic stooped over him in the canvas tent, amid the moans of the afflicted and the tang of disinfectants, he had slipped away, eyes glassy under the harsh lantern light. Numb, I accepted his effects. A worn wallet cradling 2 faded snapshots of a smiling family, back in some distant Reich village, and an unfinished letter, its ink smudged with unspoken farewells. The 2 wounded, Karl and the operator, remained behind in the station's grim embrace. Departing was agony, Karl muttered bitterly. Just my damned luck, his jaw wired in defiance, while the operator implored repeatedly, "Don't hold it against me. Sir, I'd have given anything to stick with the gun." Exhausted and hollowed, the driver and I limped onward, locating the combat trains in a concealed defile, a ragged assembly of supply wagons and weary sentries under camouflage netting that fluttered like ghosts. As we slumped into uneasy repose, the first bombs wailed earthward in keening descents, their detonations blooming in geysers of flame that lit the night like false dawns. Toward evening, 3 replacements materialized, fresh-faced youths with the wide-eyed resolve of the unbloodied, forming our new gun crew, their banter a thin veil over trepidation. Soon after, the supply spies detailed us to escort the ration trucks forward under night's merciful cover, threading through minor clashes where shadows erupted into firefights, the crack of rifles and guttural shouts punctuating the dark. We rejoined the front at last, the 2 ponderous lorries groaning under crates of tinned meat and hardtack, only to find the battalion coiled in a defensive hedgehog amid a vast maize field, stalks whispering secrets in the wind. Scarce had we offloaded when the first Katyusha salvos, those infamous Stalin organs, screamed down in organ-peeling fury, their rockets tracing fiery arcs before cratering harmlessly, a miracle of near misses that left ears ringing and nerves frayed. I slumbered deeply that night, dreamless in exhaustion's grip. Dawn stirred us anew, the broad valley swathed in spectral mist that clung like a shroud, while hilltops ablaze in crimson glowed like embers of some primordial forge. Off our left front, the oil town of Malgobek etched itself against the brooding slopes of the Drei-Hugelberg, its derrick skeletal sentinels under the paling stars. A grand white house, its columns elegant relics of czarist opulence, caught the sun's inaugural kiss, gleaming like a beacon amid the gloom. Below, squat fuel tanks lurked in shadowed repose, their silhouettes pregnant with flammable peril. To the right of Malgobek loomed Sopin, a steadfast outpost guarding the defile's throat, the gateway to the storied Georgian military road, that ancient artery etched by millennia of conquest. For centuries uncounted, legions had thundered along its coils, Persian cataphracts in scale mail, Mongol hordes on steppe ponies, Cossack raiders with sabers flashing. How much crimson had soaked this unyielding soil, layering history in strata of bone and blade. The sun swelled vast and sanguine before us, a blood orb heralding doom, as mechanized infantry atop their rumbling half-tracks intoned the timeless trooper's dirge. A red dawn lighting the path to premature tombs, voices hoarse with fatalistic harmony. A T-34 lurched into view a mile out, its turret swiveling like a predator's gaze. Then another materialized from the folds, harbingers of the storm. Our lead tanks braked sharply. A shell shrieked through the crisp air, slamming home in a direct kiss that engulfed the first Soviet beast in roiling inferno, secondary blasts popping like fireworks as ammo cooked off. We accelerated in their slipstream, the first echelon tanks forging ahead. Our third company shadowing closely, relegated once more to the outer gun on the left flank, exposed sentinels against the void. Before us, 50 Russian tanks materialized from the mist like iron phantoms, then swelled to 100 in inexorable reinforcement, a tidal surge of steel. A collective sigh rippled through our ranks, relief laced with dread. The pivotal clash had dawned, portending a maelstrom of mechanized carnage. The Soviet armor burgeoned relentlessly, disgorging from concealed lairs, minor ravines choked with thornbrush, behind tumble-down farmsteads with roofs sagging like weary eyelids, haystacks bloated with ambush, as they lumbered forth, unleashing their 76mm fury in gouts of orange flame. The encircling hills ignited in reprisal, artillery batteries, pack guns, flak nests unleashing a biblical deluge of ordnance, shells of every caliber arcing in parabolic wrath to scourge our midst. Titanic fountains of loamy earth erupted amid our formation, pelting us with pebble hail, the ground quaking as if in tectonic agony. Yet my guns slumbered in uneasy vigil. The left flank brooded silent, a deceptive lull. I scanned my arc with predatory scrutiny, from the flank's ragged edge to the town clinging to Drei-Hugelberg's flank, now drifting astern like a discarded stage prop. Abruptly, a staccato flash bloomed to the White House's immediate right, a muzzle betrayal from the heights. Instinctively I tallied, 1, 2, 3. At 5, the round struck 3 meters left, the gun bucking like a spooked stallion. I traversed leftward in haste, another gleam from on high. Recounting. It cratered 10 meters right at the beat of 5, the near miss a mocking whisper of mortality. The company commander rocketed past in his dust-caked command track, engine snarling. "Enemy fire from Malgobek!" I bellowed over the tumult. He barked a laugh, incredulous. "You're daft, Malgo's ours since cockcrow." Then he surged onward, headshake pitying my greenhorn folly. Another flash. I backpedaled the gun in reverse, tires gouging furrows. The shell pulverized our vacated spot, a geyser of dirt that dusted us like grave soil. Soon I isolated 3 batteries atop the rise, their positions betrayed by recurrent glimmers amid the scrub. The commander looped back, visage ashen. Spot on, curse it. The infantry regiment that stormed the town at dawn got mauled to ribbons. Hammer those Malgobek batteries for now. Flank's a ghost town anyway. We pivoted in situ, barrel questing upward like a divining rod. Below, our driver ranted incoherently into the intercom. What in blazes? We turning chicken? In tank duels, none suffered more acutely than the driver. His slit viewport a prison of ignorance, blind to the battlefield's savage choreography. Worse, we now proffered our naked rear to the encroaching horde, a vulnerability that gnawed like acid. We loosed a tempest of rounds and fevered salvos against the escarpment, impacts blossoming in staccato fury, first grazing the White House's facade, splintering plaster in white cascades, then kissing the forward battery true. Debris vaulted skyward in pyrotechnic spasms, timbers, sandbags, the twisted limbs of crew. All the while, I danced the gun in erratic jinks, intervals shrinking as the surviving guns zeroed us with vengeful zeal, their barrages a noose tightening. In a firing lull's merciful gasp, I risked a sweep. The vista was apocalypse. 30 of our guns and tanks wreathed in pyres, oily pyres clawing heavenward. Enemy-side bonfires tallied healthier, yet 300 T-34s massed inexorably, a steel avalanche dwarfing our resolve. The loader's voice cracked urgency. 3 rounds left, 8 total up. I jolted from my fusillade trance. In battle's red haze, thrift had evaporated, our horde squandered. Maneuvering to the commander, I confessed the shortfall. He met my gaze stone-faced, then demurred my offer to retrograde for resupply. Ammo carriers inbound any second. Husband what you've got, flit like shadows, or they'll bracket you. We careened across the maelstrom, 5th wheels in the fray. A magnet for enemy marksmanship, each pause a flirtation with annihilation, the air thick with the ozone tang of near misses. Minutes bled. The driver drawled laconic doom. Fuel for 10 clicks, tops. Desperation clawed as I scoured for the carrier, oblivious it had been pulverized earlier, a casualty unwept. The fuel caveat shattered us. Shrapnel's kiss on the tanks, irrelevant, we were marooned. Spotting a shallow depression leftward, scarce 3/4 meter deep but a beggar's bulwark. I vectored us there and braked. Gentlemen, the gunner quipped with macabre levity, settle in for the siege. I hunched at my post, synapses firing for salvation, but void yielded naught. A silhouette eclipsed me. The number 2, a raw recruit, his baptismal battle, gazed covetously at my nook's scant shelter from shrapnel's kiss. Swap spots? I murmured, voice steady as forged steel. He assented with eager nod, descending as I ascended to loiter by the gunner. Words failed us. Both Eastern veterans in our second circuit of hell, we divined the terminus etched in each other's eyes. Resignation's quiet compact. Beside the vacated perch lay a dog-eared dime novel, its cover lurid with pulp romance. I snatched it, flipping pages. The red light in the bar alternated with blue and green in a majestic play of color. Soft music evoked delicate refinement. A wry smile ghosted my lips amid the bedlam. Shells detonated in symphonic rage, shrapnel shrieking like banshees in a maelstrom of ruin. But I submerged in that tawdry haven, words a fragile raft on oblivion's tide. Abruptly, a colossal hammer blow crushed my gut's core, catapulting me skyward in weightless vertigo. For an eternal splinter, I glimpsed the gunner tumbling parallel, a fiery abyss yawning below. Our gun, eviscerated in direct cataclysm, hull rent asunder in a supernova of detonating stores. Reality crashed as I sprawled on the fuel-sodden loam, dazed amid the reek of cordite and char. Through blurring vision, I spied the recruit flailing from the pyre's maw, clawing for escape, only to collapse back into the voracious blaze. His screams a fleeting elegy swallowed by crackle, lurching upright, erupting ammo and grenades arced in lethal fireworks battering me prone anew. Close by, a guttural moan. The company commander inching earthward on elbows, gore-slick and sweat-sheened, his uniform a tattered testament. Status? He rasped, voice a thread. I jabbed toward the inferno. Guns lost. Pistol rounds? Standard 16, he murmured, gesturing to the Soviet phalanx, now 200 meters off, festooned with dismounted infantry swarming like ants. their bayonets glinting under the pall. Our remnants recoiled just ahead, a ragged hedge, a fuel-puddled depression, half-meter wide, 30 centimeters deep, beckoned. We slithered through its oily mire, the commander's limp a torment. We'd tally 14 shrapnel flecks in his shoulder later. Our crawl a glacial ordeal under the canopy of whistling death. Meantime, our tanks pivoted in savage riposte, slamming Ivan rearward nigh a kilometer despite his numerical tyranny. Treads devouring ground in vengeful churn. Russian batteries escalated to bacchanalian frenzy, shells cascading in unbroken torrent, shrapnel hissing inches overhead like serpents' tongues. We daren't lift gazes pinned in a basement. At last, a declivity sheltered the mechanized infantry's huddle. With exhalations of deliverance, we merged, salvation's ragged embrace. Soon, 80 aircraft etched the horizon, arrowing inexorably. Jubilation surged. Ours at last, about time. But a reedy descent. Reds. Verity stung. We'd misread the silhouettes. American hand-me-downs. Inaugural Lend-Lease largesse to the Soviets, their cowls unmistakably Yankee in the glare. The vanguard peeled into strafing dives, machine guns chattering in brass harvests, rounds plowing our ranks like reaper's scythe. Bombs plummeted in ululating dives, excavating craters that devoured clusters in sprays of limb and earth. In that suspended eon, minutes or eternities, we sprawled supine, fists balled against fate's whim, awaiting the reaper's lottery. Whales rent the air 20 meters fore and aft. Many silenced forever, the fortunate in their swift mercy. Then vacancy reigned. 2 Bf-109s streaked in belated reprisal, a duo's defiant ballet, laughter or tears, indecipherable in the ash. Field dressings exhausted, we writhed over cadaverous mounds, the fusillade unslaked, a dirge of unremitting spite. We commandeered a limping gun from a neighbor company, its crew ghosts. Then tank rounds nipped our heels. Short, mercifully. I swabbed gore from my visage, mine from shrapnel's superficial kisses, comrades in mingled tribute. A shard of mirror revealed monstrosity, face obsidian from blast, faintly seared by scalding oil or fuel, sensation absent in the fray's numbness. Halting at Nizhny Kub, I toppled earthward, a puppet severed, sprawled in utter prostration. Yet the commander, KK, unbowed by his 14 iron talismans, scavenged 2 refurbished guns from the maintenance echelon, mustered crews from the dregs of the hail, and plunged anew to succor our beleaguered kin, his silhouette a lodestar in the murk. Tidings followed. My comrade Fritz felled beyond the ditch, the 30th from our parent outfit to claim the steppes toll. Our division hemorrhaged 2,500 souls around Malgobek and Sopen, the ditch-side graves burgeoning into a necropolis, crosses stark under the pitiless vault. Days hence we plunged into Malgobek's vice anew, wresting it at grievous cost. This linchpin town the keystone to our thrust, sans which victory soured to Pyrrhic. Bafflement lingered. Why hadn't the Ivans dispatched a dozen tanks and a skirmish of foot to seal the valley's fourth flank, they who clutched the triad? Not a soul of us would have clawed free that cauldron. Ere long a special billet whisked me to Kotki, another Bolshevik bastion reborn in Tsarist veneer, charming hamlets from Tsarist epochs, augmented by Stalin's monolithic bureaucratic ziggurats. Such were Yesentuki, Pyatigorsk, Kislovodsk. In Pyatigorsk, where Lermontov penned A Hero of Our Time and dueled to dust in 1841, and Pushkin etched The Caucasian Prisoner, I rendezvoused kin from the homeland. We conversed in shadowed alcoves, strolled cobbled lanes fragrant with acacia, imbibed till auroras blush, toasts mingling nostalgia and resolve, thence to Kotki, where rapport with denizens bloomed organic, especially the Muslims, fiercely anti-Bolshevik. Their hospitality a balm, eyes alight with shared enmity. Ingressing the Berg, I crossed a Karachay cavalry battalion bound mountainward, their chorus and capers a vibrant reel, lithe. Sun-bronzed warriors molded to saddles, steeds prancing with nomadic grace, evoking steppe epics of old. In Kislovodsk, serendipity forged bonds with Leningrad University savants, chiefly medical luminaries, exiled to the Caucasus, lest the intelligentsia tumble into our grasp. Laboring in Wehrmacht lazarets, these grave elders, many alumnus of Heidelberg or Vienna, unspooled Leningrad's odyssey, yarns rivaling Dostoevsky's fevered visions. The siege's famine had descended with blitzkrieg swiftness mere fortnights in. Provisions dwindled to phantoms, rendering curs, felines, rodents Epicurean phantoms beyond plebeian grasp. Cannibalism's specter, echoing 1921's Great Famine, stalked boulevards daily, a neighbor's peril from his kin's hollow gaze. Demises concealed for weeks, ration proxies drawn on the vanished. Corpses festered beneath beds in miasmic rot. The frail street-bound drew wolf packs of famished urchins or adolescents, stripping the fallen bare in frenzied rite. Caretakers, per edict, bore burial onus. Thus vigilant, they preempted by pilfering the deceased, shunting carcass to adjacent thresholds, foisting toil on enfeebled peers too gaunt for graves. Evacuation rattlers bore the moribund, en route fatalities hurled from casements at halts, space sacred, tracks a macadam of nudity, naked husks in frozen tableau. Sheer inferno, an elder quavered, veiling eyes with quaking palms. Whence the sinew to endure? Sustenance ample yet withheld. Privilege and soldiery spared, we consigned to exquisite perdition. Most had interred kin in that abattoir's maw. I departed their enclave benumbed, horror's weight eclipsing battlefield's gore. Even carnage's zenith paled. I meandered thoroughfares, balalaika strains wafting from taverns, limbless troopers promenading promenades arm in arm with raven-tressed Caucasians or flaxen Flemish medics, twilight gilding their entwined silhouettes. Dusk drew me to a modest orthodox fane, portals agape, tapers guttering in vesperal dance. Pausing, I crossed the lintel. Supplicants, stooped ancients, crones, knelt on flagstones worn by piety's tread. God vests us a sublime charge, I mused, arduous yet exalted. If we but seize it, prove worthy, let the German soul wrestle at lavish vigor. May our martyrs vitae seed perennial amity with Steppe's unchained folk and Orient's crags, mankind's boon. Seeking solace, I ducked into a dim bar pulsing Caucasian and Mohammedan refrains, monotonous wails that repelled Teutonic ears, yielding the nook to natives. A Luftwaffe Hauptmann petitioned my table. Colloquy flowered. Precisely my sentiment, he exhaled eased. Fresh from furlough in West Germany's heartlands, where my sire-in-law helms a vast munitions forge. Ukrainian lasses there, many volunteers lured by gilded vows, caged in wire-latticed barracks, escorted duo-wise like wards. Utter folly. His pleas fell on deaf hearths, a droplet on sizzling iron. On deaf hearths, a droplet on sizzling iron. Thence I shipped to the salt steppe, bridging Kalmuk wastes to Caspian's brine. Realms north of Makhachkala, Stoy, Achulak, billeted in Armenian exile hamlets, looms humming ancestral motifs. There, a CAC regiment wrought havoc on foes. Colloquies with its septuagenarian colonel, idolatry's font among his Caucasians, whom he esteemed peers, invigorated like mountain zephyrs. This Muscovite elder, circa 60, commanded absolute fealty by humanity's alchemy. Epochs later, tidings, post his demise, the regiment, like Kissingen division, perished to the man, unyielding in rearguard, no capitulation despite futility's glare. Then retreat loomed unwhispered. Nalchik tumbled Karachay Cherkessia's seat soon after. Homeward summons followed, second respite to orchestrate office minutiae, months of ledgers and logistics. This tour I cloistered candor, the Hauptmann's parable ratified in stark relief, conditions amplified in locales. A Senite Inn, Josef Burkel queried, Eastern dispatches? As per Wehrmacht bulletins, I parried terse. He probed Ukraine's fetters. Convict-like post-Bolshevism aid. Rations scantier than Reich's, toil Herculean. If thus here envision the Ost, he pivoted to esprit, phrase verity. I dispensed unvarnished gospel. Weeks he prowled unheralded audits of billets and board. Anon, a missive surfaced. Edict to stewards, mandating Eastern toilers humane equity. His demeanor warmed. Dialogues burgeoned. Ost-centric, my pleas for inflection seeding hope. I gleaned his machination, supplanting Erich Koch's venom in Ukraine, a sanctified salve for Reich's wheel, scuttled on Partay's reefs. Solace, I'd swayed a potent voice, albeit subaltern, stirring autonomous cogitation among veteran National Socialisten, their critiques scalpel-sharp on Tide's caprice. Pre-front recall Burkel convoked, slamming a broadsheet from Dr. Robert Lay's Ken, transcript of vitriolic harangue assailing Catholic divines, spat to maimed cadre pre-party service. That wretch spews this bilge now? He fulminated. Allies leaflet Catholic enclaves mightier than tonnage. Fools or felons? I gaped mute. Comprehension nascent. Ecclesiastic animus damned tactically, morally. Frederick's edict. Let each realm's soul quest paradise per its light. Fritz invoked ceaseless yet forsaken. Our Christendom feud, clandestine puerile, sought divestiture sans surrogate. Rosenberg's mythos a cipher to Mandarins thrice scanned. Small marvel the debacle with Volk's core. Battle's abyss spares none bar zealot patriots prizing Vaterland or Vita, scarce breed. Our mass levy craved anchors in dread's vice, paternal piety's tether. Rosenberg proffered void. Thus multitudes reverted ancestral, Alpines crossing selves pre-assault, not exclusives. Yet onslaught persisted, zealous as inquisitions amid Reich's nadir. Western raids escalated torment. Our swath, integral to output, languished. Saarbrücken, Mannheim, Ludwigshafen, Luftwaffe's Aegis evanesced. Converse with an Untersturmführer in Himmler's orbit, air war chronicler. Udet divine true, self-dispatching. Crash? Nay, testing armament, voracious. As inspecteur, he foresaw Ost's drain on westward bulwarks. Fears mocked. Thus, pristine RAF sidearm ended it. New weapon obit pristine. Retort eluded. A compatriot's candor, etched in silence. A cherubic Ukrainian waif's salutation lingered weeks hence. Prelude to cataclysm's knell. Stalingrad's overture, terminus's dawn. Hitler dubbed it Ostbeacon. Beacon it blazed, illuminating our unmaking. Sleepless vigils plagued, specters of legions. Wan, ravenous, forsaken, clinging valor in vain bastion. Not Stalingrad's maiden tryst with fate. Erst Tsaritsyn, 17th century Hamlet ballooned under Empress, slumbered obscure till Bolshevism's forge. 1918-19, counter-revolution's whites, southward, eastward, converged to throttle Leninism. Fusing squadrons for strangulation, their nexus, Tsaritsyn's Volgan ford, 60,000 souls, oblivious pivot, whites besieged. Bolsheviks divined doom, Lenin dispatched plenipotentiaries, Stalin envoy, Voroshilov commissar, with autocrat writs. Destiny tilted crimson. Tsarists faltered, strategic myopia or martial caprice, preserving the revolt, dooming the uprising. Retaliation, pursuits, routes. Tsaritsyn rechristened Stalingrad, Stalin's fief, burgeoning industrial colossus on Volga's bend. Quay's crux, metropolis, tractor colossi and forges teeming, populace ballooned, astride history's anvil anew. Fated titans, Paulus 40, Rokossovsky, clashed finale. Kremlin prevailed. November 23, 1942, 22 divisions, 3,000 km from frontier, 300 from lines, encircled sans Stalingrad's portals. February 2, 1943, final phalanx yielded. Weeks hence, Saarbrücken's modest Weinstube, a Leutnant crony, Hitler-Jugend vintage, approached, aged beyond tally. Last wounded airlift from the Kessel, he confessed wearily. There in sauerkraut-scented nook, Stalingrad unfurled, Ost's apex cataclysm. Romanian flanks pulverized north-south, Soviets infiltrated void. Sixth Army Trust. Initial poise, stores ample, assaults repulsed sanguinarily. Decay crept insidious, then avalanche. Luftwaffe's resupply faltered. Göring's hubris redux. Late November, Paulus devolved writs. Korpsführer improvised. Mid-December, Manstein's Hube clawed to 48 kilometers. Flares kindled jubilation. Breakout fever pitched. Breakout fever pitched. Führer edict. Hold Volga bastion, no sally. Rations atrophied. 6 to 8 birds diurnal for legions. Casualties 1,000, 2,000, chiefly inanition gelid. Yet Elan endured. Soviets conceded postlude. 600,000 Teutons engaged. 360,000 felled wounded. 60,000 guns, 1,000 Katyushas, 5,000 behemoths to quell. Denouement. Paulus's January 25th fiat. Break gratis. Unheeded. January 24th. General Daniels capitulated south, rending seam. Thousands perished for his lapse. January 29th. Wedge bisected pocket 5x2 kilometer. To north's armor, heavies. South's disarmed foot. Paulus. GPU seller's thrall, voiceless specter. Northern redoubt capitulated February 2nd. Ost's decisive drape fell. We sat stupefied, vapors curling. Sirens wailed. Leisurely rising, we quaffed remnants. Ordnance kissed rails proximate. We inured uncaring. Stalingrad's scope, politic martial eluded then. A non-clarity. Stalin transmuted crusade, communist cosmogony to Rus nativism. Our imprudence paved it, Third Ostwinter assailed. Eastward ingress unveiled armories lacuna, purchased exorbitant, never mastered. Soviet forges secrets, Bolshevism's psyop alchemy on Rus Soul's forge. Materially, valor raised arsenals, mulched yields. Psychically, none decoded mechanized psyche's abyss. Dostoevsky's tomes, Pushkin's lays availed naught. No Tolstoy's adulteress, Gogol's revenants, interred with Cossacks. Clerics, kulaks in Cheka pits, flickering cabaret phantoms in Lenin's crucible, honed by Georgian New Ost paradigm. Hermetic labs masses proved materialism's creed, life suborned to doctrinal blade. 1941's breach, generals' guile, troops' metal, shattered facade. Not lone conquests, but epiphany. Millions erst duped, glimpsed deceit in our deportment livery deeds. Stalin bankrupted. Lab ravaged, agitprop risible, yet our trespass inverted. Unwitting, we birthed politic implosion, martial sequel. Front-bound anon Kharkov riposte sputtered, foe sagacious bleeding our elan dry. Anglo-Yank bombers' tide eroded. Production's lunacy whispered, endless tank Flugzeug iterations, superior yet suicidal. Retooling epochs idled forges while T-34s proliferated. Debut novelties faced ordinal deluges, merits moot. Luftwaffe mirrored. Frontlings, lieutenants, Unteroffiziers baffled. Solitary gleam, Führer omniscient would rectify. Interim terrain hemorrhaged, ossuaries burgeoned unbound. Gnashing, we yielded numeric inferiors, westward for steel. But west schemed, not surged. Tauroggen pacted, Blücher, York, idled Pruss Corps sans sovereign nod. Rapture in fatherland, court masked. York suspended, court-martial loomed. Blücher barred courier. Absolution at Kalish. Prussia allied Kronos raced vengeant. Ost command aped Soviet terror scorch, voiding Dnieper van to exhaust crimson host. Transfixed I beheld exodus, equine drays myriad, autos serpentine, civilian tides, male, female, taut, staggered under heirloom's yoke. Regiments, batteries, armor, foot, Cossacks, Teutonhorse, westbound solar quest, cataclysm swelled, rearward, pyres devoured hamlets. Gloaming's Dnieper, faded ford, flushed ember glow. From casemate overlook, fluvial bank teemed, myriad bellowing kine, CAC drovers' cries herding wades into torrent, river quickened with bobbing crania, straining Occident. There, defenses protracted, contrast to 41 storm reds routed. Since solstice, steppe avalanched Europa, men, materiel uncounted. Soviets westbound in Homeric phrase, battlefields strewn, gutted panzers, sundered birds, ordnance detritus, myriad cadavers. Pivots zenith, flex or fracture, command essayed vectors, electing minimal vitae, maximal delay, evacuate Ost Dnieper, folk, bergs, mills, herds, sheaves, void absolute crimson tardied months, bulwarking lines impregnable, harvest funneled railhead preflume, bridged westbound, 10-minute dispatches, contraptions arcane, plant integri, grain cascades, human cargo roof swarmed, flank dangling like vinous clusters, Bolshevism's bane. Crepuscule deepened, more herds descended, mountain Caucasians a horse, nimble mounts, guiding submerges, beast rafts on broad breast, down flume, porcine pandemonium on Leviathan barge, grunts, squeals chorusing, perpetual, diurnal, nocturnal relays, grains famine offensive swirled, absorbed, Kronos dissolved, lone span tempted Martin Raider, flax corona repulsed, relief wheeled, we threaded ghosted lanes to quarters, pyre arcing firmament, remote detonations thundering welkin bloodied, that vigil per writ, disengagement, foe dawn-tail to vacuum, denuded of steading souls beasts, grains dearth direst snare, Dnieper retrograde triumphed, scant captives, losses loomed but Occident surprise, dread revelation, no bastion, famed line phantom, we entrenched ad hoc under spite, ire rending, all castes bar discipline's vice, mutiny's brink. Russ Ford's synced hours, faded stream decreed askew, sans east wall, fluvial vein no bulwark historic, leaders edified on dune our vitae dam, retreats hour essayed metal truer than advance, erst we sowed panic's gale, Zurück, perpetual aggressors, septentrion, Occident, southeast south, Ost paramount, routing quarry to drench. Partisan's gelid recoil seared dread indelible, subsequent thrusts effaced not, we matured therein, fear's forge, Soldiers transcending war's nadir, illusions shed, terrain quanta specious, war metastasized, vicissitudes myriad, conquests veil blinding, cakewalk mirages, pre-won laurels jettisoned. We tallied not baubles, but game's axioms, enemies ours, long viewed, adaptive. This gnosis transcended reminiscence, nation's praxis sine qua non. Timely amid southern politic nadir post-martial throw, ultimate fortitude confronted verity, unbowed by encircling maelstrom, duty's zealotry buoyed fronts, bushwhacks, guerrilla snipes, attrition grinds. A year prior, such riposte thrilled victors. Now Teuton soldier logged chagrin sans shock, our counters wrote. York's Tilsit feint, Prussia Napoleon's Russ thrall, bred deserters, Scharnhorst Russian allied. MacDonald's recoil isolated York, duty urged breach, patriotism equivocated, liberation's nonce, Sans Jr. zeal, head's peril loomed. Parley dibbits via Scharnhorst, tempo's duel intensified. Ost reply, Soviet anachronism, Dnieper void to fray crimson sinew, Dnieper void to fray crimson sinew,